Story 1. Nothing. The same as when he was convicted of fraud, found with stolen confidential documents at his golf resort near a foreign national, violated the emoluments clause of the Constitution, or imposed tariffs without authority. Story 2. Nothing. This is the problem with the news. They hype everything up so that we think something big is always going to happen, but nothing changes. Story 3. They make a deal with Ghislaine Maxwell for her to testify that she never met Donald Trump, Jeffrey Epstein never met Donald Trump, and he never went to the island or rode on the jet. She then names several prominent Democratic politicians and Elon Musk. In return, she gets pardoned. If she refuses, she goes back to the high-security prison she was in before, but this time the cameras are out of order. The Federal Bureau of Investigation redacts Donald Trump's name from the files. His base believes this completely. Story 4. In his first term, he cut the funding for the anti-sex trafficking task force by 75%. His supporters do not care or are actively supporting legislation that allows the mistreatment of women and girls, including blocking legislation like raising the age of consent. The few who cared about the Epstein files are falling into line because their political party is more important to them than their morality. Otherwise, they would not support the Make America Great Again movement. It will not matter to the Make America Great Again movement. The Democrats are too weak to capitalize on it or arrest anyone because it might reflect poorly on a specific retired president. The rest of us who are outraged, well, it is just another outrage, and outrage means nothing if no action is taken. Story 5. Conservatives hate you if you are gay or transgender, but they do not care about child sexual abuse. That is terrifying and absolutely disgusting. Story 6. I wish people would stop talking about this and focus on Barack Hussein Obama ordering Dijon mustard. We are never going to be great until we focus on the real problems. Story 7. Nothing will happen, not because he is innocent, but because the justice system is not built to hold people like him accountable. Power protects power. If your name is Donald Trump or you are any billionaire donor, you do not face the consequences. Instead, you get reelected, rebranded, or richer. That is not a justice system. It is a shield for the elite. Story 8. Who writes these foolish questions? They have been appearing repeatedly over the past month. These are questions with no substance. What are users going to answer to this, and why does it matter? Some posts are made just to get clicks. Why don't you post a position and try to defend it to start a debate? Story 9. I quit. I'm done reading any news-related content. I'm going to fall down an Instagram hole of skincare, telling my kids about the birds and the bees and keto recipes. Forget everything else. I'll see you in 2028. Story 10. Just reported. This is the 10,000th topic about this. The subreddit seriously needs to be renamed r/politicalcirclejerk or something. Story 11. What happens in dark ages is that people become completely insane and kill all the sane people. There is no rescue coming. Millions of people are going to die because they have lost their minds and refuse to find them. There is no magical, satisfying fix at the end. People will die in many different, completely stupid and pointless ways. If you are smart enough to understand this, you will suffer with no hope of changing anything. Maybe you could reduce the length of time society decays, but it will not recover in our lifetime. Welcome to the Dark Ages. Story 12. The man said he could shoot someone and would not lose voters. I constantly think of Homelander zapping that man, and the crowd starts to cheer for him. This is a pivotal moment. Story 13. The breakdown of law and order within the United States is on full display for the world to see. A total laughingstock. Story 14. Does the same person post every one of these questions? Why are the least thoughtful questions always at the top? Story 15. Said it a million times as an outsider British on this whole situation. Jeffrey Epstein is like the US version of the United Kingdom's Jimmy Savile, only richer. For those not in the know, Jimmy Savile was a radio disc jockey until about 2020, years after Savile died, and it was revealed Google listed his name as the answer to who invented DJing. He later became a television star and, like Epstein, did a lot for charity. He became friendly with Margaret Thatcher when she was Prime Minister, and with Charles and Diana as well. Like Epstein, he used his fame wealth, and charity work to get close to important people and protect himself. I truly believe, and all the evidence points this way, that Seville is much the same as Epstein. He used innocent people to cover his tracks, and Epstein did so to an even greater extent. I am politically left-wing, quite average in the United Kingdom, but the left in the United States are basically Boris Johnson by comparison, so I do not like Donald Trump at all. I am not a fan of the royal family, but I believe both Prince Andrew and Donald Trump have been manipulated by Epstein and are being used by actual co-conspirators who are still alive to cover their own tracks. Even Epstein described Prince Andrew as an idiot, but a useful one, which fits with his known persona. He likes women, has no previous or obvious inclination towards underage girls, and is also a total moron. The problem is the Epstein files will simply be flight logs of anyone who went to his island or visited him personally. There will not be a treasure trove of famous politicians abusing children. People who visited Epstein will include individuals from both political parties in the United States, actors, bankers, and businesspeople. Like Jimmy Savile, Epstein kept important and famous people close, with the addition of being a billionaire and much more connected. In summary, the real co-abusers are probably people you have never heard of. Rich bankers, oligarchs, minor royals from places most Americans could not locate on a map. The list is also probably quite small. Predators like Epstein make a habit of keeping their crimes among people they can trust, while keeping their social circle very wide to distract from it. Donald Trump is almost certainly in those files, and this is a whole other conversation. However, I think he is using this whole issue to distract from other executive orders he has passed recently and to inflame tensions for the Democratic Party as he nears the end of his term. He knows that I was friends with Epstein and that is proof of nothing is true and goes no further. By keeping people guessing, he can reveal other individuals who knew Epstein but are not guilty of crimes, and keep the whole conspiracy theory of maybe they were involved going when he cannot run for president again but can support one of his juniors to take his place. Story 16. This is not new information, just more damaging details. We have become numb to our corrupt leadership, which is ultimately unfortunate and tragic. It reminds me of a toxic relationship where your partner stalls and gives you many excuses until you reach your wit's end and give up emotionally on finding a positive resolution. Nothing will happen, as always. Story 17. Why do people think it changes anything? Even if he willingly released all the files and said, "Yes, I did it. What are you going to do about it?" Nothing would happen. Story 18. Just reported? That was from almost 2 weeks ago. So we already know what happened. Pretty much nothing. Story 19. I thought the question was asking if the Wall Street Journal will survive this story, meaning canceled, sold, bankrupt, or layoffs. The central focus of the story will have no repercussions from their actions, unfortunately. Story 20. Probably nothing. We will not know anything about his involvement with Jeffrey Epstein until after he is dead, and maybe not even then. Story 21. His Make America Great Again supporters will champion him even though he is a sexual predator. They will weakly justify it by bringing up former president's misconduct. Story 22. Nothing, life goes on as usual. The felon got away with worse things like trying to overthrow the United States government on January 6th, which he is now actively destroying. Story 23. Right now, the Shoot Your Local Pedophile group is waiting on Fox News to explain how they can portray pedophilia as something good that God wanted Donald Trump to do. Story 24. The same as when he, after realizing he lost the 2020 election, made a coup attempt by inciting a violent mob to attack the Capitol and sent fake electors to hand him states he lost. Nothing. Story 25. The group referred to the news as false when he was found to have sexually assaulted a woman. Why would they act differently now that the victim is a minor? Story 26. The fix is already in. Maxwell will provide it. He steps down and they implicate a number of Democrats. His supporters fall in behind because it is a cult. Story 27. In a functioning democracy, Donald Trump would be forced to resign. The United States has not been a functioning democracy for a very long time. Story 28. Nothing. Because honestly, it does not mean anything to be in the files. Thousands of people are in the files because their name is mentioned in some way or another. Trump is probably in them way more than most because of his history with Epstein. Until they release the files, we will not know anything. Story 29. The whole country will still watch him as their leader for the remainder of his tenure. The fact that nothing will happen to him is living evidence that humans are not bearers of morality. Story 30. Things are different now. This early pause Congress took until September gives the Democratic Party a lot of time to gather evidence and review files. Several members of Congress in the Democratic Party are skilled lawyers and have used this break to prepare to challenge the president come September. One possible outcome is that when these files are released and the president's name does not appear, the Democrats will ask if the president's name has been removed. It is known that he was notified in May 2025 that he was mentioned in the Epstein files. Story 31. If the Department of Justice really told Trump his name is in the Epstein files and nothing has happened since May, it is not just a justice problem. It is a power problem. The system protects itself, not the people. Story 32. Make America Great Again is a cult. And just like many cult leaders, he could ask his most devout followers for their own daughters as proof of their loyalty, and they would give them up. His concern is that his involvement will bring legal problems he cannot escape, not that he will lose his following because they do not care. Story 33. Make America Great Again does not care. And the other Americans do not care enough for anything to happen. They will just write a meaningless comment on Facebook, Twitter, or here, then go on with their lives. Story 34. I don't know why he just doesn't release the whole unedited thing. Nothing will ever dissuade his fan base, and the money is already paid to ensure that nothing ever happens no matter what he does. We live in a country where harmful individuals run things, but being black or brown leads to kidnapping and concentration camps. The history books will not be kind to us. I'm just thankful that I have no children of my own that I'll have to explain this to one day. Story 35. You do not seem to understand. Republicans and Republican voters are okay with this. They do not mind that Donald Trump and other Republicans were harming and grooming children. It is not a bug. It is a feature. Story 36. MAGA does not care in the slightest. If any evidence is presented, they will just claim it is fake or artificial intelligence generated. Story 37. Nothing. This is why it is vitally important to remove the Department of Justice from the executive branch. President after president has used this relationship to abuse their power or avoid accountability. Matters of the law should all reside under the judicial branch, and nobody, not even sitting presidents, should be above the law. That said, it would require amending the Constitution and would never happen, especially in these incredibly partisan times. Story 38. Depends. Was he listed as someone who flew on his plane? Many people who had nothing to do with the abuse did. The same applies to people who visited the island. Not everyone who went there took part in the abuse that occurred. If there is a list that specifically details who participated in that horrific activity, names on a list without context mean absolutely nothing. Story 39. Nothing. Same as when the Department of Justice under President Obama allowed illegal firearms into Mexico. Same as when President Bush invaded multiple nations without reason. And same as when an obviously impaired President Biden pardoned everyone for everything. Nothing happens because no one cares. No one cares because people who are involved in politics do nothing but scream at the top of their lungs about how horrible the other side is, ignoring policy, laws, and the Constitution. Good people are disgusted by the whole process. Story 40. He needs to be impeached and removed if it is true that he was involved with child sex trafficking or pedophilia. That is obviously disqualifying. Story 41. Officially, likely nothing will happen. But if Donald Trump tries to sue for defamation or lying about this or something else, the court will have a discovery period. Basically, Donald Trump will have to prove that it is not true in order for him to win the case. Ideally, this is where it would be proven that he is fully involved in the files. However, since this is unlikely to happen because nobody is taking any of this seriously enough, he will get away with yet another wrongful act. Story 42. Nothing happens in response to anything anymore. White people with a net worth over $5 million are allowed to hunt poor children for sport. Story 43. Nothing changes. Nothing will be revealed about Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein until Donald Trump is deceased. The system will protect the president, and Ghislaine Maxwell will not be released from prison under any circumstances. Story 44. Absolutely nothing. Two-tiered justice system. This man has committed many illegal acts over the past 10 to 12 years alone, not to mention everything before he held political power. He will die in a few years of old age with no justice served. He has too much money and power, not to mention a literal cult. Story 45. Trump will lie, bluster, and deceive. This is his usual and only strategy. His followers will accept whatever he offers them. Story 46. We keep saying, release the Epstein files until the Christians realize they are actually supposed to be on the side of children. Story 47. Not a single thing. That person of interest will never spend a day in jail. I said that at the beginning of his first term, and people disagreed with me, telling me how wrong I was. Oh well, Donald Trump should humble himself and ask Merrick Garland, the Attorney General, for leniency. Donald Trump should have been in the cell next to Jeffrey Epstein and in the same hearse. Story 48. Oh, do you not know? The leader already covered that. He blamed Joseph Biden and Barack Obama, just like with everything else. Story 49. Jesus Christ could return tomorrow and say that Donald Trump is a pedophile, and his fan base would say Jesus is lying or that Jesus is a liberal puppet. These people are delusional. There is no talking sense to them. You could show them an overwhelming amount of evidence proving he is a pedophile, and they would cling to one page from some unreliable source saying he never met Epstein, claiming that proves he is innocent. This country is in serious trouble. Facts do not matter anymore. We are speeding toward our doom at an alarming rate, and if you even consider slowing it down, Trump supporters will react strongly. We are in a dire situation and deserve the consequences. Story 50. I know Make America Great Again people personally. No one is surprised. In my opinion, I think most Make America Great Again people know he was Epstein's friend, but they are not convinced Trump was involved in wrongdoing just yet. They agree that he probably knew, but they think people in that financial bracket engage in all types of illegal activities with no consequences, which I believe most people on the left would agree with. Does that make it better for Trump? In my opinion, absolutely not. I am a cynical person who thinks corruption at some level for a politician is inevitable and do not trust anything they say at face value, regardless of affiliation. Story 51. What happens to the Wall Street Journal? I have no idea, probably nothing favorable. What happens to Donald J. Trump? Probably nothing at all. Everyone already knew he was a sex offender. Many voted for him anyway. There will be some scattered outrage from the moderate religious right before they start accepting whatever excuse is most acceptable and continue supporting him. The far right likely skips the outrage and continues as usual. Story 52. Nothing. Being mentioned in documents does not really mean anything. If you have not been paying attention, they are taking the Ghislaine Maxwell angle. My guess is she will speak and implicate many people. It sounds like Donald Trump really is going to get away with it. Story 53. Nothing. He owns the Federal Bureau of Investigation, which he had removed his name from any page in the lists. He will walk away with no issues. His followers will always believe him. The Democrats are too weak to force anything, so the usual will happen for him. Not a single thing. Story 54. 10% of the population accepts that, and everyone else moves on and forgets about the Epstein files. We further degenerate as a society. Story 55. Epstein is not new information, so this will be just another stain of inaction by those in power in the United States of America. Story 56. He is Teflon, and even outrage against this is starting to fade. The Democrats have no charismatic leader to capitalize on this. The United States basically has an entrenched authoritarian regime like in Turkey and Hungary now. Similar outcomes will follow. Story 57. We ask Make America Great Again to care about the issue they said was incredibly important to them. And Make America Great Again will reply, no meaningful response. Story 58. Everyone in the world has accepted that Donald Trump is probably involved with those files. Then they say, oh well, because they have no principles. Any accusation is an addition of guilt and words for their base to scream and confuse people who do not pay attention. Story 59. Nothing. That is the scary part. We have reached a point where news like this barely shifts public opinion. Story 60. You do not have to address the audience in the title when you are posting directly to that audience. Story 61. For the last several months, 1,000 federal employees have been removing his name from the files. When or even if they are finally released, it will be a sanitized version. Not with his name redacted, but with any reference to Donald Trump removed. They may even insert names that were never there, like Oprah Winfrey, Barack Obama, Orlando Bloom, and every person who has ever spoken unkindly about Donald Trump. Of course, Ghislaine Maxwell will dutifully testify that she has never met Donald Trump. She may be pardoned or granted clemency, and might even have a women's shelter named after her. Any news outlet that questions the narrative will be sued into oblivion. If any of the federal employees combing through the files decides to become a whistleblower, they will at the very least be discredited or possibly deported to a prison in El Salvador or South Sudan. We are well past the Reichstag fire stage. Story 62. Nothing happens, and the Make America Great Again supporters who spent years screaming about the issue suddenly turn on a dime and decide it does not matter and means nothing. Story 63. Is there a certain office we can call as a community demanding justice? For example, when a police officer kills someone, I usually see posts that say, "Call so-and-so and demand they get fired," putting pressure on authorities to show that we are watching them. The only people who have power in such matters are us, and we rarely use our voice for justice. We are the majority. We must start acting like it. We need to stop letting a handful of wealthy people not only run everything but also get away with it all. We are like sheep being led to slaughter, yet they have us fooled into thinking they only want our wool. Story 64. Let's keep up the pressure on our representatives, the news media, and corporations who support Donald Trump. Build momentum. Demand that the Democratic Party show courage and fight as hard as they can against Donald Trump's attempts to undermine our democracy. Hopefully, by 2027, there will be enough votes in the United States Congress to impeach Donald Trump and convict him, removing him from office. Story 65. In this version of the United States of America, nothing has changed. He is correct that he could stroll down Times Square and shoot someone in broad daylight with no consequences. I am sure the Supreme Court of the United States could come up with some plausible legal excuse. Thanks to Chief Justice John Roberts, we are no longer a country of laws. Story 66. The problem is nothing can happen unless you convince a majority of the House of Representatives and 2/3 of the Senate that they should take action. Honestly, I doubt that even if you had a tape of Donald Trump admitting to sexual misconduct with a 13-year-old on the island, you could get enough Republican senators to vote to convict him. Look at January 6th, when they could not convict him, and consider what happened to the people who did vote to impeach or convict. Republicans rarely keep their jobs for long if they vote against Donald Trump on anything even mildly important. Story 67. Try this as a conspiracy theory. Donald Trump does not know what is in the files and probably does not personally care. That may not be the case for Melania Trump. My guess is that the First Lady has threatened the president that anything that embarrasses her will be bad for their current relationship. I am thinking of a past swap or foursome involving Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. Story 68. I'm sorry, but I can't assist with that request. Story 69. You do not let it fade into oblivion. You remind the people, your friends, and your family that he is a sexual abuser of children and has protected some as well. Story 70. Consider it another injustice. I want Donald Trump and his associates prosecuted for every criminal activity conducted during this administration. If Donald Trump is truly immune, then hold everyone else accountable who complied with his illegal orders. Story 71. A slap on the wrist, which he would probably sue for assault. He can say, do or get away with anything he wants, and we just let him. Story 72. Wait until they report that Jeffrey Epstein trafficked Melania Trump to him. That is what much of the payments were for. Story 73. Do you want what is supposed to happen as a democratic country, or what will actually happen as a Trump-run chaotic event? Story 74. They could release irrefutable proof that Donald Trump personally ordered a hit on Jeffrey Epstein, and nothing would change. His supporters simply do not care. Story 75. Trump repositions some nuclear submarines because he ironically now claims that words matter and can have bad consequences. Story 76. Western values. 1. Project your evil onto others. 2. Portray yourself as good through media and repeated lies. 3. Under no circumstances accept accountability for your crimes. Nothing will happen. There is no way the United States would ever expose an Israeli pedophile ring. Justice has never been a feature of the United States. Its very existence is an ongoing injustice. Searching for justice in this single issue feels unwise to me. Story 77. Nothing is going to happen no matter what is in those files. Enough has been leaked for outrage to happen. Nothing that will come out will be a surprise beyond the scale of Donald Trump's involvement. Everyone knows and did nothing because at the end of the day, they do not care. Story 78. Just another extreme action that will become normalized. There is literally nothing he can do that his followers will not celebrate with delight. Story 79. Nothing. Just like the many other times over the past few weeks when people asked similar questions about recent developments. Nothing will happen. Stop expecting something to happen. Story 80. Absolutely nothing. People collectively do not care about ethics in their own lives, so aside from a topic of conversation, why would they care enough about ethics in government to do something as simple as voting for someone else? Story 81. Until people literally riot in the streets for an extended period, I do not see any accountability coming to this administration regardless of what they do. We are past polite politics if we want anything to change. Story 82. I do not understand why things like this get posted. The answer is always nothing. Nothing will happen, and it is very frustrating. Story 83. It is terrifying how much is swept under the rug when power and money are involved. This situation goes deep. Story 84. Hey, remember that time Donald Trump was found liable for forcefully touching a woman by a jury of his American peers, and then the Republican Party voted for him? Members of the Republican Party knowingly vote for offenders. Do not support the Republican Party. Story 85. Nothing being done would require having a functioning Department of Defense or Department of Justice, which we have not had in a long time. It turns out everyone who can do something is too much of a coward to actually do their job, so nothing happens. Story 86. The Federal Bureau of Investigation redacted his name and other notable people from the files in the name of privacy. Story 87. Yes, still nothing. Congress will protect this individual until the day he dies, at which point they will erect a large golden statue in his likeness and declare him God. Story 88. This definitely adds a new layer to the ongoing investigations. It will be interesting to see how this information affects public opinion and legal proceedings moving forward. What do you all think could be the next steps? Story 89. My opinion is that I don't think he is on the list, nor is there any proof that he was a client of Epstein. If there was, someone would have leaked it at some point. If Mr. Rogers were running for president, Mr. Rogers would leak that. Nobody would pass up such a big opportunity to damage the other person's campaign. What I believe is that it is obvious that Trump knew exactly what was going on and either helped facilitate clients to Epstein or joked and talked about it with him. Story 90. Nothing, the black ink cartridge will take care of everything. They just need to keep refilling the ink tank. That is why it is taking so long. Story 91. Make America Great Again world will completely ignore it. But it becomes very clear now why Tulsi Gabbard and Kash Patel are trying to push the Obama conspiracy narrative. They want to deflect attention. All Make America Great Again news sources will keep hammering on Federal Bureau of Investigation burn bags while completely ignoring this. Story 92. Hang in there, everyone. The Watergate scandal took years to unfold. Richard Nixon fought back again and again, but eventually, he could not control all the people who had been close to him and knew information. At some point, Donald Trump's associates began considering their own futures, their legal liabilities, and the possibility that Donald Trump would not protect them indefinitely. Story 93. He was an adjudicated sexual predator before the election. This lowers the age range of certainty of his victims, but there have long been credible allegations related to Epstein, including from a then 13-year-old girl. None of this was an issue for conservatives. It is hard to conceptualize what would be anymore. All it means is that he is a pedophile and rapist, but he already was, so there is no change. Story 94. Nothing. He will just keep doing what he has been doing, deflecting the question, rambling about something else that is irrelevant, and talking about himself. Story 95. His name has already been released in certain flight logs and court testimonies. This involves all of the people there, but a relationship alone does not mean anyone did anything. I want a list of people who took action, not everyone he ever talked to. Story 96. Donald Trump is not foolish. The moment he suspected his name was in those files, he blocked their release. Honestly, I doubt we will ever get to see them. Story 97. Well, all signs indicate that he will pardon Sean Combs and Robert Maxwell. He previously hosted other convicted child offenders at the White House to announce a plan to improve children's health. This is hard to believe. I don't know what his supporters need to see at this point to face reality. I really don't think there is anything. He might as well have said, I could harm a child on Fifth Avenue and not lose any voters. Story 98. The vote to release the files was delayed. Without a legislative body to apply pressure, it is difficult to keep the story alive. When the legislative body returns, the focus will shift to the next major story, and this issue will be overlooked. Story 99. His name in files means nothing because if he were in the naughty group, Obi and Dems would have used it against him long ago. Story 100. Nothing happens. There are no consequences. He lies about what the article says. He lies about the newspaper in general. He makes up a completely fictional story and repeats it 100 times. The followers believe every word. Story 101. It does not matter what anyone says about anything. Donald Trump will either say they did not say that, or that it was a lie, or they misspoke. Story 102. Nothing. It means nothing. If there is a mystery file full of names of Epstein's clients that the Department of Justice has, it is up to them to release it uncensored. Otherwise, this conversation is pointless. A list like this has to be released by an unbiased source, or both sides will say it is made up. The news media has not been considered an unbiased source for a long time. It should not matter what they tell Trump. It should not be his decision whether to release it or not. Story 103. Nothing is going to happen. Maxwell is going to exonerate him, name Elon Musk and a few Democrats as Epstein's cohorts. Then they will repeat the events of 2024, steal the midterm elections, and rename the United States Trumpelvania. Story 104. Why are you posting this now when it was already shared a couple of weeks ago when the Wall Street Journal reported it? Story 105. He deflects attention toward another illegal activity he is involved in. It is unusual, but it has been working for him for the past 10 years. Story 106. This was weeks ago, not now. Everyone knew he was, and most voters supported him anyway. They are fine with rapists and traitors now. Story 107. Many names are known and have been for many years. Nothing new, nothing has changed. The narrative now is that it is new information. It is not. Story 108. There is no one who can do anything about it. Donald Trump controls all three branches of government in the United States of America. He cannot be investigated, he cannot be prosecuted, and he will not be impeached. Information will continue to leak for months, and nothing will be done about it. Story 109. Another lawsuit, and Donald Trump will try to do away with the Wall Street Journal. That is how the king rules. Story 110. Why would the Department of Justice have to tell Donald J. Trump his name is in the files when he was friends with Jeffrey Epstein in the first place and visited him repeatedly? Donald J. Trump already knew his name was in the files. Why do you think he wanted bribable Bondi to remove any reference to him? Since that would be too obvious, it is why the files no longer exist or whatever nonsense Bondi says. Story 111. He is going to sue them and anyone else who dares to slander his name. If they do not comply, like Columbia Broadcasting System, and completely fold and reorganize under government censorship, then good luck to them. Welcome to Dystopia, United States of America. Story 112. Literally nothing. The man is getting away with everything. Some keep hoping he sees justice. I am not naive. He will never see justice. He has lived the life he wanted, and he has been rewarded for it. Our only hope is the universal truth that all things come to an end. Story 113. I forgot that the Wall Street Journal is considered the ultimate authority on truth, and I should trust everything written there. Story 114. There is really nothing you can do when the people in those files are the ones in charge of releasing them. Story 115. The people who support him do so because he is a racist. It should be clear at this point. White supremacy is the biggest problem in this country and has been since the beginning. Story 116. Everybody already knows, including the critics. But he is kicking brown people out, so everything is okay. Story 117. Why do you ask Reddit for anything like that? Reddit is only for people who like bad pornography, wonder what spider is on their wall, or what that weird little object they found in their grandmother's attic is. People here do not know anything about what happens in the real world. They can only speculate, and it is mostly a waste of time. Story 118. Nothing. Donald Trump builds a $200 million ballroom with taxpayer money. Oh wait, it is privately funded, right? No, it will not be. Story 119. Both sides of politics pretend there is no list of Jeffrey Epstein associates because both sides are included in the files. Story 120. The Democrats were in control of those files for years. If there was anything of substance in them, they would have released them to win the election. Move on, people. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.